Please welcome Cleveland Clinic's CEO and President, Dr. Toby Cosgrove.
Well, good evening and welcome to our Ideas for Tomorrow. The United Arab Emirates is a remarkable nation. Few countries have come so far so fast. It has gone from a land of Bedouins and pearl fishermen to a nation of builders, financiers, and philanthropists. Its people are progressive, its cities are showplaces, and its future is unlimited. Cleveland Clinic has welcomed patients from the UAE since the 1970s. Over the years, our relationship has deepened personally, professionally, and culturally. In 2007, we were honored to be asked by the Health Authority of Abu Dhabi to assume management of the leading health facility in Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Khalifa Medical City. This 700-bed tertiary care facility includes a 150-bed behavioral science pavilion, a 100-bed rehabilitation center. It also operates 12 specialized outpatient clinics, 9 primary healthcare centers around the city of Abu Dhabi. Now we're involved in one of the most ambitious medical projects in the Middle East. In 2008, we broke ground on a new specialty medical center known as Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi. This is a 360-bed facility that's being constructed on Al Salwa Island and is scheduled to open in 2012. It comes about through a unique partnership with Mubadala Healthcare, a division of the UAE's Mubadala Development Corporation. All of our activities in the UAE bring benefits to Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. If our region is to progress, we need to strengthen our ties with the UAE and broaden our knowledge of the culture and people. That is why I'm thrilled that our distinguished guest has agreed to speak today. Ambassador Yousef Al Otaiba is the ambassador to the UAE to the United States. He served for 7 years as Director of International Affairs for Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. He has been the liaison in defense and terrorism and helped strengthen UAE's security and economic relations with the United States. Most recently, he helped the UAE leadership promote and deepen trade relations between the UAE and other government, commercial, and private sector entities. The ambassador is a graduate of Cairo American University. He earned his degree in international relations from Georgetown University and was an international fellow at the Armed Services Defense University. In September, Ambassador and the Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan met with President Obama at the White House. It was reported that they discussed a wide-ranging and mutually beneficial relationship that united the two countries and pledged to continue close cooperation on security, economic, and energy fronts. Please watch this video that will help describe what is currently going on in the UAE.
The Arabian Peninsula has for centuries been the cradle of numerous tribal peoples in the Bedouin way of life. Today it is home to one of the most advanced and fastest growing nations on earth. In 1971, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the ruler of Abu Dhabi, united 6 small emirates to create a new federation, the first in the Arab world. Once a poor, secluded country, the United Arab Emirates is today a strong, vibrant, and modern nation that is open to the world.
Through 30 years, the country has changed in a totally different way. Other countries would take 300 years to change the way we have.
We need to talk about the past in order to understand the future, in order to understand even the present. And that's why today, 30 years later or 40 years later, of all, you have all of this. This is not just because of the money. It's because of who we are.
In just over 3 decades, the nation has changed from a tribal culture reliant on agriculture and fishing to an entrepreneurial success story with world-class infrastructure. The leadership has improved education, advanced healthcare, and embraced change as the UAE modernizes, consistent with its history and cultural values. Women play critical roles in government and business, and people from all different cultures and backgrounds live peacefully in the UAE. Though small in size, similar to the state of Maine, the UAE has become an important player in regional and international affairs. The country's commitment to regional peace and prosperity and willingness to engage with the world have also led to an extremely close relationship with the United States. The UAE and the United States are close friends and reliable allies, with deep, long-standing security ties, especially in the Gulf region, and a burgeoning commercial relationship. Trade between the two countries increased fourfold in the past decade, and cultural and education partnerships have opened countless new doors for social development and cross-cultural engagement.
We stand as one of the best examples for a society that actually can drive coexistence of people and do the best you can together to move forward and have everyone benefit and win from it.
The people of the UAE are proud of their history and of their beautiful land, with its diverse and breathtaking landscapes, ranging from towering red desert dunes and rich palm-filled oases to precipitous mountains and sparkling Gulf waters. As they reflect on the impressive achievements of the past 30 years, UAE nationals can only look to the future with optimism and confidence in their country's potential.
Please join me in welcoming His Excellency Ambassador Yousef Al Otaiba. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Toby, for that lovely introduction. Thank you for putting together such a lovely clip. It really encompasses everything we've been trying to do and explain who we are and what direction we're heading in the UAE. Thank you for hosting me here today, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet with all of you, and more grateful for the honor of telling you a little bit about my country. I'm in Cleveland today to visit an institution that is no stranger to the UAE, an institution whose expertise, counsel, and commitment have played a crucial role in the development of the healthcare system in Abu Dhabi. The UAE's partnership with the Cleveland Clinic is one of which I'm particularly proud, and I'm extremely honored to be here today to facilitate continued cooperation with the clinic on a number of fronts. Living in Washington, it's easy to lose sight of the partnerships that best exemplify the important bilateral relationship between the UAE and the United States. As I travel from city to city in the US, I'm still struck by the number of firms and people who are doing business in our country. For example, with $500 million in sales, Ohio is the 8th largest exporter to the UAE among all states. Just here in Cleveland, for example, corporate powerhouses like Eaton Corp, Parker Hannifin are both significant exporters to the UAE. Jones Day, also headquartered in Cleveland, has an office in Dubai. And of course, the Cleveland Clinic is very familiar in the UAE. These Ohio companies and institutions, and thousands more across the US, have been part of the UAE's economic and social development success. It's a story of rapid economic development, diversification, and the opportunities and challenges that small economies like the UAE face in an increasingly competitive and globalized world. To understand the UAE economy today and the government's commitment to diversification and social development, we need to understand a little bit about the UAE's history. And by that, I mean the period before the discovery of oil. The late Sheikh Zayed, the founder of the UAE, once said, "He who does not know his past cannot make the best of his present and future, for it is from the past that we learn." That is the best characterization of the UAE's approach to economic policy today, And a brief look at the history of the UAE will tell you why. Less than a century ago, the area that we now call the UAE did not produce a single barrel of oil and actually relied on imports to meet its modest hydrocarbon needs. The principal source of income was the pearl diving industry. At the time, local divers would collect pearls from the shallow waters of the Gulf, and rare and coveted as they were, the UAE pearls were sold to jewelry manufacturers and then on to buyers in Europe and the United States. But in 1916, the bottom fell out of the UAE pearl industry. It wasn't shifting consumer taste or a global economic catastrophe, but rather a technological innovation. Someone simply figured out how to make a better and cheaper pearl. And in 1916, half a world away from the UAE, a Japanese entrepreneur patented a new technology for the development of cultured pearls. By 1935, there were over 350 pearl farms in Japan alone, producing over 10 million cultured pearls per year at a lower price and with more consistent color and shape than the pearls we were able to produce. Japanese cultured pearls dominated the global market, making the collapse of the UAE pearl industry and the onset of a rapid and painful economic decline that persisted into the 1960s. It was only then that oil changed everything. The poverty of the 30s, 40s, and 50s is not something Western audiences often associate with the United Arab Emirates, but for many of our older generation, the memory is still fresh in their minds. There's a well-known story in the UAE from about the time of 1953 when the late Sheikh Zayed visited Britain and France and was overwhelmed by the quality of their schools and hospitals. Recalling his trip many years later, he said, "I was dreaming about our land catching up with the modern world, but I wasn't able to do anything about it because I didn't have the wherewithal in my hands to achieve these dreams. I was sure, however, that one day this would become true." Sheikh Zayed was right, and when the UAE was given another chance of prosperity, it grasped it with the knowledge and conviction of a people unwilling to relive the past. The UAE leadership wisely decided to use this opportunity to develop both the country's economic and its social institutions, especially related to education and healthcare. On the economic side, previous generations learned the hard way that a heavy reliance on a single resource makes your economy prone to volatile shifts in demand and to unexpected technological developments. I think you might be able to see where I'm going with this. The parallels with the oil industry are simply unavoidable. It's no secret that the oil industry could easily be impacted by sudden shifts in demand, the potential acceleration of climate change, and possibly the development of new game-changing technologies. If that happens, we do not want our economy to grind to a halt again. In many ways, the bitter experience of the post-Pearl period has been the real driver behind our efforts to diversify the nation's sources of income away from an over-reliance on oil. During the 1970s and 80s, with the availability of the oil revenue, the UAE's drive toward a more diversified economy began with the improvement of our physical infrastructure. We built roads, power plants, seaports, airports, water systems, and telecommunication systems. Today, the UAE boasts one of the most advanced levels of infrastructure development in the entire world. As importantly, beginning in the 1970s, the Abu Dhabi government also built a financial infrastructure with the creation of the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. ADIA, as we like to call it, began with a clear and simple mandate: to invest oil surpluses in a diverse global portfolio of investments. The genius of the ADIA model was that it created a significant stream of returns that was neither exposed to nor dependent on oil prices or local market conditions in the UAE. In fact, in good years, our investment returns surpass our oil revenues. In the 21st century, the UAE is pursuing an even more aggressive and sophisticated phase of economic diversification involving four main elements. First, continued investment in the hydrocarbon sector, not just to expand production of oil and gas, but to enable the production of higher value hydrocarbon products such as petrochemicals and plastics. Second, the establishment of a variety of new government-owned investment organizations such as Mubadala, the International Petroleum Investment Company, and Dubai World, that have moved beyond just passive investments into acquiring international companies and launching new enterprises. Third, the deliberate outsizing of industry. And by that I mean establishing industrial capacity well beyond domestic needs, specifically for export-oriented purposes in industries such as aluminum smeltering, aerospace manufacturing, logistics hubs, and airlines. And finally, the fourth element of the UAE's current phase of diversification is the establishment of a strategic international partnerships with leading global companies with the likes of General Electric, AMD, Airbus, Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, and Carlyle Group. Through these complementary diversification strategies, the government of the UAE is seeking to use its resource wealth wisely in order to establish a more sustainable model for the future of our country and our economy. The UAE is now the second largest economy of the Arab world, despite having a population of only 6 million people, roughly half the population of Ohio. It's no small thing considering how far we've come in barely 40 years. The UAE pearl industry may be long gone, but our economic future has never been more secure. And in a great irony of his economic history, we now sell more oil to Japan than any other country in the world. That revenue allows us the luxury to afford a few Japanese pearls and still have something left over to purchase other goods and services from around the world, including here in the US. So that economic diversification is not only good news for the Japanese, who have a secure energy supplier in the UAE, which generates revenue, but is also good news for the United States, where we buy an enormous amount of goods and services and invest a great deal of our money. The UAE now is the US's largest export market in the Arab world, and in 2008 was the 20th largest export market for the US globally, ahead of Spain, Ireland, and Indonesia. The UAE purchased $14.4 billion worth of US goods in 2008 and currently imports goods from every single state in the United States. And many US companies benefit significantly from the increasing business opportunities available in the UAE. As of today, we have over 750 US companies operating in the UAE, from Starbucks to ExxonMobil, and from Bechtel to Krispy Kreme. Sorry, I didn't mean Krispy Kreme here in Cleveland Clinic. The UAE's approach to international investment has also facilitated a significant flow of capital into the United States, creating thousands of US jobs in the process. UAE Capital is financing a new leading-edge semiconductor manufacturing plant in upstate New York, a port and logistics center in South Carolina, and the completion of a huge city center real estate development project in Las Vegas, among many other examples. But Sheikh Zayed's vision of the UAE catching up to the modern countries was not only about economic development. It's also about nurturing what he called the real asset of any advanced nation, its people. Our leadership knew that this meant investing heavily in two things in particular: education and healthcare. During the 1970s and 80s, along with the roads and power plants, the UAE drastically improved its social infrastructure. We began building schools, universities, hospitals, and clinics. We had to catch up fast, and to do that, we focused on partnerships with top-class institutions from around the world. That's why I'm here today. For example, New York University is building a 2,000-student campus in Abu Dhabi. It's set to welcome its first class in the fall of next year. MIT is working with the Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company to create the renewable energy-focused Masdar Institute of Science and Technology. Paris Sorbonne University opened a campus in Abu Dhabi in 2006. The Guggenheim and the Louvre are each building brand new museums on Abu Dhabi's Saidiyat Island, otherwise known as our cultural district. Johns Hopkins Medicine, which develops research and educational public health programs in Abu Dhabi, has been operational there and working with us for over 20 years. Harvard Medical International has established the Harvard Medical School in Dubai in 2004 to foster the professional development of physicians, nurses, and research scientists in the Gulf region. And of course, the icing on the cake, the Cleveland Clinic. Abu Dhabi and the Cleveland Clinic have had a terrific relationship for a number of years, and my presence here today is a testament of how much we value this partnership. You might be familiar with some of the other impressive projects we're working on together. For example, Mubadala's Healthcare and the clinic are developing a 360-bed hospital to be called Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi. In addition, the clinic also manages and operates Sheikh Khalifa Medical City, a network of healthcare facilities in Abu Dhabi as well. As these two examples demonstrate, our partnership is not just about words. we see eye to eye on the need to enhance healthcare facilities in communities across the world, and we need to work together to make it happen. Thanks to such partnerships and the UAE's government's commitment to over the years, today we have first-rate schools, universities, and healthcare facilities right in the UAE. Indeed, all of our accomplishments over the last 30 years, we are most proud of our human and social development in education, literacy, and health. Few things exemplify the success of this approach better than the progress of Emirati women. 40 years ago, almost no girls went to school. Today, 70% of all graduates from UAE universities are women. 64% of our government workforce are women. 4 women now serve in our federal cabinet as ministers. And in October of last year, the first female judge was sworn in. 3 women recently received their certification as fighter pilots in the UAE Air Force, and we'll be working hard to protect our homeland. I know it's difficult to conceive, but most of these women will be coming over to Tucson, Arizona in a few months to begin their F-16 training at the Air National Guard in Arizona. And in Dubai, the first class of women are training as muftis, Sunni Muslim scholars who interpret Islamic law, another first for the Middle East region. As our economic diversification and social development strategies demonstrate, the UAE has embraced openness and engagement with the world. Rather than resist globalization, the UAE is implementing policies that we believe will enable us to capitalize on the opportunities of free trade and international partnerships, while withstanding the challenges that come from being a relatively small economy in a competitive international system. One positive side effect of this approach has been a consistent strengthening of ties between the UAE and the US over the course of the last 4 decades. I believe that this has been good for both of our countries and for Cleveland in particular. I'm confident that our relationship will only grow stronger in the years ahead. We look forward to hosting you in the UAE soon to enjoy the great warmth and the spirit of Arab hospitality. Thank you very much for having me, and look forward to hosting you in the UAE. Thank you very much.
Well, I know many of you have questions, and the ambassador has kindly consented to take questions from all over the group. So let's start over here.
What is the most important lesson you've learned while serving as U.S. ambassador for a little over a year now?
Well, certainly not finished learning. Being a year on the job and amongst people who have been doing this for quite much longer than I have, my first lesson is to listen a lot and to learn as much as I can and to take in as much as advice as I possibly can. I see myself as a very privileged individual who gets to serve in one of the most prominent embassies or posts in the world. So as opposed to trying to dictate or pretend I know things, I think I'm going to rely on the expertise of the people around me and try to become one of the best ambassadors in Washington.
Over here.
Ambassador, you recently met with President Obama. What impressions would you take away from your meeting with President Obama, and how would you describe your meeting?
He's extremely focused and determined. I know you've heard this from many people and many analysts and experts on TV, but he really is very calculated, very mellow, very calm and collected, and he listens a tremendous deal. A lot of the meeting was an exchange of opinions, of points of view, of hearing our take on things in our part of the world, and it wasn't one side telling the other what they thought, as it was hearing the point of view from a different perspective, and we really welcomed that. And we spent about an hour with President Obama and his team, and it was a very frank and cordial conversation where we felt that we really got to know him a lot better.
You spoke a lot about other industry investment in the UAE. What other healthcare organizations are taking similarly to us in modernizing your health, in helping you modernize your healthcare?
I'll say it, even though Dr. Cosgrove is right next to me, but Johns Hopkins has been a very reliable partner. and Harvard Medical School as well. But the initiative that we are driving right now with Cleveland Clinic is something that we've only really initiated in the last few years. About 3 or 4 years ago, we came to the conclusion that we need to seriously revamp and modernize our healthcare and our education systems. And as we tried to do that, we put a plan together, and the plan really involved getting the best and brightest of these two sectors to come to Abu Dhabi and become our partners. It's very easy to go and get consultants or get companies that help you, but when you get a real partner in the way we have dealt and created the partnership with Cleveland, you really are looking at a big picture, long-term effect of benefiting the country and obviously here benefiting Cleveland. So I think this is something that we are still on the verge of seeing the benefits of in the next few years.
Hi, can you please explain what you feel is the greatest impact that Cleveland Clinic has brought to the Abu Dhabi region?
Cleveland Clinic obviously brings a wealth of expertise and experience in the healthcare industry that a country that is only 40 years old has not had the benefit of. So the things that they have mastered and the processes that they have implemented here, and I learned a lot more about them today, are something that we will go through a very long period of time for us to go through the same lessons learned. And by bringing a partner like Cleveland Clinic, we get to benefit from the experience that Cleveland Clinic has already been through. So they bring a tremendous amount of know-how to a very young and relatively developing country. And we rely on that expertise to gain time.
Hi, thank you. I'm Dr. Karab Sayed from Cleveland here. Thank you for your nice presentation. I have been to Dubai a couple of times and very impressed with the real estate and modernization process which is going on there. And I have been, personally involved in their real estate, as an investment. And I just want to ask you, while we are here, and can your embassy or consulate help us? Sometimes we cannot get communication from the builders, and they would for last 1 year say that all our projects have been stalled and there is no more new buildings being built by the government's order. And sometimes it has been difficult to find out what is going on with our investment.
Yeah. That's a very fair point. Let me answer the question from a broader perspective if I can. And I'll look at the economic development over the next few years. It's no doubt that Abu Dhabi and Dubai are obviously integrated, and two members of only 7 formulate the United Arab Emirates. So the economy of the 7 Emirates make up the whole. And obviously there's going to be strengths and weaknesses. Dubai is going to face some economic challenges over the next few years, very similar to many countries that are going to have difficulties in improving their real estate and their financial sectors. And those are the 2 sectors that have been most hard hit in Dubai. But I think Dubai ultimately has the fundamentals of making it a very successful city. It has great infrastructure. It has a very attractive lifestyle quality. It's a very advanced hub, whether it's for transportation, commerce. It has a very dynamic tourist sector. So I think ultimately when the global economy begins to pick up, I think it will pick up Dubai along with it. And you will start seeing real estate prices go back up. You will start seeing projects go back online. You will start to see the banking industry revitalize itself. So I think we're no different from what many economies are suffering right now. The good news is that Abu Dhabi is in better shape economically for simply 2 reasons. One, the oil income, which is at a healthy price. And 2, the investments that I mentioned through sovereign wealth funds like Abu Dhabi Investment Authority and others provide a cushion for revenue even when sectors in Abu Dhabi dwindle. So ultimately, I think I would urge you to look at the economy as one, as opposed to Abu Dhabi and Dubai or Sharjah. And secondly, if there's any specific inquiries you need to make into some of the investments or some of the programs, we'd be happy to facilitate. Please put in a request with the embassy and we'll try to get you the answers you're looking for. But I think at the end of the day, it's not as gloomy as some of the analysts and reporters make it out to be. I think we're suffering from what many other countries are suffering from, but I'm confident that we'll pull out of it in the next few years.
Hi. What is the relationship between Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and are the two Emirates economic rivals?
It's the relationship of two brothers, big brother and little brother. And we have 5 other brothers, and we all live happily together in the same home, and we have 1 ambassador representing them in the United States. So the short answer is, there are some economic competition, but competition is a healthy thing. They're not rivals. I wouldn't say rivals. I would say people competing for economic advancement to better the quality of life in their both respective Emirates. But at the end of the day, it's one country and one economy and one voice.
Yes, thank you, Your Excellency. First, let me congratulate you. I'm a Formula One fan. Abu Dhabi surpasses the world by far in your track, and fantastic. My question is, do you see the UAE ever playing a moderating force in diplomatic initiatives in the Middle East?
Yeah, the answer is absolutely yes. But there are many ways where you can play a moderating force. There are very discreet ways of doing it, and there's very public ways of doing it. We in the UAE typically prefer a very low-key approach. And we have been very actively involved in the peace process. We have been very actively involved in Pakistan. We have actually stepped up and was one of the first countries to send an ambassador to Iraq. We've also wiped off $7 billion of debt with Iraq in order to help stabilize the Iraqi government and get it to stand up on its own 2 feet. So I think the UAE is far more involved in moderating issues in our region than we have been in the last 5 to 10 years. And I've known this because I've started working 10 years ago. And the level of diplomatic engagement we have on the variety of these issues is far greater today than it was 5 or 10 years ago. So I do believe that we'll continue to play a moderating force. Obviously, there are some things that are beyond our purview. We'll do our best to continue to bring different sides together to talk, whether it's on the Palestinian issue. We'll continue to try to strengthen and support and stabilize the government in Pakistan. We'll continue to have our forces serve in Afghanistan to try to keep things under control. These are policy decisions that are not going to change overnight. It's just there are different ways and means of getting to them. And while some countries prefer to doing it, in front of, under the spotlight, we prefer to do it quietly.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
I would like to ask you a question. By the way, thank you for speaking with us today. I really enjoyed the presentation. Very interested. I'm actually in the local university here and studying international relations, so I had to see you. So I'm glad to see you here, doing well. My question to you is, do you see a large need for the UAE to have more American intermediaries as far as trade and cultural exchanges? Is that something you see on the horizon? And I know you mentioned in your speech about the local area industry as far as what's going on with Cleveland Clinic, but are there any other large projects that will help the state of Ohio? Thank you.
Thank you. Again, to take the question from a larger, broader perspective, the relationship between the UAE and the US is strategic, it is important, and it's critical for both countries, not just for the UAE, not just for the US. So everything we do to enhance and build and develop this relationship is something we need to continue to do, whether it's a relationship with Cleveland, whether it's a relationship with the US military, whether it's bringing a cultural institution like the Guggenheim. I think these are things that we must develop. From my very humble perspective, 10 years ago, our relationship was primarily military and security cooperation. I would characterize the relationship as probably 80% military and security and 20% everything else. Today, 2009, 10 years later, that ratio is inverted. 20% of our relationship, or what comes across my desk, is military and security, and 80% is everything else. So we have achieved a tremendous milestone in 10 years. Where are we going next? There's no playbook that tells us this is exactly the play we're calling next. But we have predetermined certain sectors that we want to develop in the UAE. And I ran through some of them, but I'll do it again. Aerospace, IT, oil and gas, healthcare, education, tourism, culture. So these are the pillars that we are driving in the UAE. Anything that falls within the purview of these sectors, we are willing to discuss. We're developing a cultural district, an island that is going to house 5 very prominent museums. And the initial plan was to have these 5 museums and some exhibition space. After the master plan was done, museums that we hadn't contracted with became very interested. The British Museum is now securing a deal in the same district. So there are things that you can develop and not plan for. Once you develop them, I think it will attract others. And the idea is to develop these sectors to a point where it will attract others to come and join you. So we're going to continue, and hopefully in 10 years, my successor can come here and tell you that from 80 to 20 is now 100% a broad mix of everything between the US and the UAE. And hopefully this is what the direction that we're going in.
Why has your country been successful at managing tribal jealousies, power plays, when other countries have not been so successful?
Very easy answer. Leadership. We have a very wise and a very long-term visionary leadership. And when you look at how to run a country or a clinic, when you look at what's beneficial for your operation and how to best develop it over a period of time, you factor in everything. And we are blessed with wise leadership that had a vision for what the UAE would look like 20 or 30 years from the day of its inception. And Sheikh Zayed, our leader, God bless his soul, was one of the wisest men I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. He wasn't an educated man. He had street smarts and a certain political savvy that was unparalleled. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think the UAE would be where it is today.
Well done. One more.
I suppose that this question is vaguely similar to the last one. What do you see as being the primary advantages and disadvantages of coming from the very personal kind of government that would have been before to the humongous world-centered and just larger, involving in corporate and world things that the next generation is dealing with now?
Well, again, it all comes back down to leadership. And I think being a small country with forthcoming thoughts and designs of where they want the country to be 20 or 30 years from now allows us to execute plans to develop the country at a much faster pace. I'll give you an example. We decided in Abu Dhabi to master plan the city. And we figured the best way to do this was to bring a team of architects and master planners and design what the urban landscape and layout of the city should look like in the year 2030. So we brought a team in. They worked for a year and a half on what a book that's now called Abu Dhabi Master Plan 2030. They produced this book. This book gave you all the requirements and details and codes for what Abu Dhabi should look like in 2030 from an infrastructure standpoint, from a zoning standpoint, from permits, where bridges go, where residential areas go. It was a complete comprehensive guide to building a city of the future. We then took this guide and we shared it with our real estate developers. And our real estate developers, we as a government told them, this is 23 years worth of guaranteed business for you to develop an entire city. But the only rule is you have to make it look like this. You can't build a hotel in an industrial area. You can't go build a home in a commercial area. This is what the city should look like. We as a government guarantee you this amount of business. And this is the way we're doing it with not just master planning, with economic vision, with education, with culture. So there's a 20-year plan now for all the various sectors that we're developing. Once the plan is in place, we work backward to achieve it.
Well, let me just ask you one more question, if I could. Please not be modest, and tell us about the development that you recently opened 2 weeks ago, and how it was planned and how it was executed in the time that it was done in.
Yas Island?
Yes.
Yas Island is it's where the Formula One race was recently hosted, but it's another example of the type of planning that we've put together. It's a natural island that didn't have anything on it. It was completely unutilized, and contrary to popular belief, the government of the UAE or Abu Dhabi did not actually spend billions and billions of dollars on developing it. The government of Abu Dhabi only paid to develop the infrastructure, so water, roads, bridges, electricity. That was the responsibility of the government, and that came out to a total of $300 million, far less than what people expected us to pay. The prime of the development really went to a private sector real estate developer, Eldar. They contracted with Formula One and they built the track. They contracted with hotel developers and basically rented out hotel space. They built a marina, and the marina is now being operated by a private operator. They contracted with Ferrari and built a Ferrari World theme park, which is now basically a Disneyland version of Ferrari, basically with a Ferrari theme for adults. That's going to be coming online next year. So I would say the testament to this vision is really enabling the private sector and taking the government out of the massive development role that we did in the 70s and simply being a regulator, a supervisor, a manager, if you will, to supervise the projects and make sure that they are done on time. And I have to say, hats off to everybody that worked on Yas Island, because if anybody had the benefit of being at the race, it was truly a remarkable development, not just in what it looks like, but in simply the amount of time it was put together. 2 years ago, there was nothing on Yas Island, absolutely nothing, just desert. Today, it's probably, along with not just one of the most exciting and modern racetracks in the world, but it incorporates various other components that make it one of the most lively venues one can ever see. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you see it, or you can ask Dr. Cosgrove, who was there 2 weeks ago, saw it himself.
Ambassador, I'd like to thank you for a wonderfully enlightening view of what's going on in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and the Emirates, and we very much appreciate your partnership and your willingness to come and share it with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.